Hey everybody,
Hey!
welcome to Excel TV, episode number 17. This is Rick Rantham. Hey Oz, what you doing, man?
What am I doing? Man, I was here schooling Jordan on his motherland, the history of Dayton, Ohio, where he is, where you got bands like Fazo, Ohio Players, Slave, Roger Troutman, and Zapp, and Lakeside, all came out of Dayton. You got to embrace that funk, Jordan, and then we can embrace Excel.
Wow, how do you follow that up, Jordan?
I don't even know how to follow that up. I was going to say something silly about the fact that the guy who came up with Control-Alt-Delete came out of University of Dayton, but really, compared to funk, you know, what is that? What is that? That's nothing. No, I know nothing about funk. I have no groove. Back to you, Rick.
Goldmeyer, anti-funk. I like that. Hey Dave, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
How are things in Utah?
Yeah, in Salt Lake City here, and we have just beautiful, beautiful weather. It's just probably going to get cold, but right now it's awesome.
Right.
Well, welcome. Hello, everybody. This is Rick Rantham, rickrantham.com, Excel TV, Excel.tv, and Excel Sumo now. And hey, this week I'm in sunny Irvine, California, Orange County. It's very nice in my little Pinto, pulling right up next to all the fancy cars. And tonight is brought to you by Double Tree Hotels and the Lagunitas. How do you say that again, Oz?
Lagunitas.
There you go. That is bringing the funk there, Oz.
Yeah, that's right. And a little bullet bourbon.
Nice. And hey, here at the top of the show, I want to remind everybody about Excel Sumo at excelsumo.com. That is the contest that we have going on. Listen, let's say you have something that you built in Excel, right? And you built something that goes out to the web and grabs Yahoo stock stuff and brings it in and does simulations and does all kinds of crazy stuff, and you can't wait for the world to see it. This is your chance. Go over to excelsumo.com and enter. Man, just for being one of the top 16 in the draw, you get one of Oz's new books. Oz,
That's right.
The first 16 off the press. The first 16 books off the press are going. And hey, if you're one of the grand prize winners, you're going to New York City to model off. Hey, and guess who else is going to be there? Oz is going to be there, more than likely. Jordan's going to be there. Whole crew's going to be there. So go over there to excelsumo.com and check that out and get your stuff done. Hey there, Jordan.
All right, so let's hit these challenges. This is good stuff. So last week we did the old multiple choice. So I'm going to actually flip on our screen share. Let's just jump over. So I had asked you, which of the following functions can be used in a simple formula to determine how many weekdays there are in any calendar month? So we had a lot of model-off registrations. So I posted this on Facebook. So several people won. In fact, so many that you'll see in a second. I couldn't name them all. So the answer is network days. And, you know, we really did well with this multiple choice one. So I'm going to actually continue that theme. But thanks to our friends at Model Off, so free Model Off registrations went out to several of our winners. So I think there were 6 in all. So remember, if you know the answer, you should check out our Facebook and our Twitter. But before you do that, you should check out our episode 17 challenge. So we're going to pull back from Model Off again, because just continuing our theme from our favorite folks. So which of these functions is a volatile function in Excel? Match, rows, areas, or indirect? And if you want, you can write in your own answer. It's probably going to be wrong, so just pick from 1 through 4. And if you think you know the answer, you can tweet us at ExcelTV. You can actually email us, challenge@exceltvshow.com or challenge@excel.tv, our new domain, or you can check us out on Facebook. And we do post these either tomorrow or the day after that. We really try to do it as quickly as possible online. So make sure to check that out. Make sure to jump on our Facebook and answer the question there. That's the easiest way for us to see you. And, you know, I didn't really have any funny ways to send in your answer this time.
So the good thing there is you mocked. You mocked everyone and said, hey, you're probably not going to get this right.
No, I was just saying, if you write in your own, you're not going to get it right. I don't even know. Sometimes I just keep going and going, and I'm like, I got to pull that back. Don't write in your own. So I just wanted to make sure people knew that that was wrong. back to you, Rick.
Hey, thank you for that, Jordan. So this week, Mr. ExcelJet.net. It's got a nice rhyme to it. It's got a nice flow to it. We have David Bruns with us. Dave, could you tell us a little bit about the history of the story of ExcelJet.net?
Yeah, so ExcelJet.net is a site that I have been working on with my wife, Lisa. And before that, I'd been doing some corporate e-learning training and always had been doing a lot of Excel work, and just got the idea one day that that the world needed like a site that was clean and organized, and a place where you could go. Really, it's really made for people that that just want to solve a problem and then get back off the site and finish their job and go home early and spend some time with their family. And so anyway, that was the vision, and been working on it now for about almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years sometime right after Christmas, and got about 4 courses on it and a whole bunch of free videos and a lot of reference material. Like we have a large list of shortcuts and a large list of functions and formulas, and pretty much continue to add content to the site every week. And it's been a much bigger project than I ever envisioned, actually. It's much harder to document Excel than I thought.
It's interesting. Whenever we had Chandu on, one of the things that Chandu said is, he thought about, since he does a lot of training, he thought about instead of, there's only so many functions, right? There's only so many things that you can teach, and at the end of that, then what do you teach? And then, he realized, he had an epiphany, I guess, that it's not just the 1,000 functions, it's the 1,000 functions times the 100 different ways you could use that function, whether that's a job or project management or any sort of discipline. How do you approach this with your training?
Well, can I ask to something that might be before that? Is why do you say that it's hard to document? And then I think Rick's question will nicely tie in.
Yeah, well, it's big, right? Like, I don't know, one of my readers sent me an email not too long ago and said, that they were really making progress and they were super excited, but that they felt like that Excel was like the ocean. And I feel that way sometimes too, and maybe you guys have as well, right? Like, I mean, pretty much every company I worked in, I would have been considered one of the Excel experts, but as I got into it more and really tried to map out how you would cover the whole thing, I was immediately kind of humbled because I realized there was so much about Excel that I didn't know, and that's still the case today. Like, I feel like I learn something every day. And to your point, Oz, I think one of the things is that Excel is like it's a Swiss Army knife tool. It's used by every major vertical out there in a different way, and often sometimes because of legacy, because that's the way they do it, sometimes because they had some hotshot that showed them how to do something really interesting and really cool, sometimes because it's the only way they could figure out how to make something work. It's a very flexible tool, and so, like you say, it can be used in almost any way. And to your point, or to the question about how to handle functions and formulas, like, really, what I've really started to do is I created something I called the minimalist guide to functions, right? I wanted just a single list of functions, and I wanted to see the arguments that they accept clearly, like which ones were required, which ones were optional, and I wanted to see them in one list, and that's on our site right now. It's not complete. I think it's 100 some functions, and of course there's more like 400 functions in Excel. And then I wanted a really brief, concise description of each function. And then I started to build formulas that use the functions, right? And I started to link the formulas back to the functions, because I also wanted to be able to look at, like, let's say you're counting cells, right? And you're counting cells that have negative numbers, or counting cells that are blank, or counting cells that contain a specific text string or something like that. Then I wanted to be able to show all those formulas and the functions that would be used in those formulas typically. Because for me personally, like, when I look at lists of things and I see, like, for example, some product or array formulas, when I see them occur again and again, that kind of helps me understand, like, oh, that's what that's good for. That kind of function works. You'll see that all the time in those type of formulas. And again, I feel like I'm really far away from complete mastery, but I haven't seen any resources that do it quite like that. And because I don't have the resources finished, I can't say that they work that great. But for me, it's helping me learn a lot more about it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. What analogies would you use? Because you say it is like an ocean, but sometimes I think about it as the handkerchiefs coming out of a magician's sleeve.
Yeah.
So you learn pivot tables exist, and then you start learning those, and then it come out with power pivot and inquiry, and then you find out there is some scenario tool and a camera tool, and the magician just keeps pulling these handkerchiefs out.
Yeah.
But then when you look at the functions, that seems like an ocean full of Lego blocks.
Yeah.
You reassemble them in another way, you got a whole nother ocean.
Yeah.
It just keeps going.
It's funny because you mentioned pivot tables, and a lot of people, that's something that we built a course on, or I did one last year, and in a funny way, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this before, but pivot tables a lot of people, they seem really mystical and complex and exotic. But in a lot of ways, pivot tables are way easier than working with advanced functions because most of the work is done for you. You just have to set up the data and make sure that it's working right, and then you can look at it in 10 different ways without even writing a single function. And it's one of those funny things because you'll see people struggle over, all sorts of sum ifs and count ifs. They could do it in 15 seconds in a pivot table.
Yes. And why do you think that is?
Well, I think those functions are hard to understand. They actually require a much better understanding of Excel. And especially if you start messing around with any kind of array formulas or something like that, like you definitely have to understand in your mind, what those arrays look like and why, when you multiply one times another, why you get some funky result of true false values and how you might coerce those into zeros and ones and it's not terribly difficult, but the average person's not going to get that for a long time. I know I didn't understand it for a long time.
Right. Right.
So I have a question for you. So jet, what is the jet in Excel jet? Why jet?
Well, honestly, I've got this thing about short names and in brand, I'm not like I have a background in design too, and I just had this idea looking around on the internet that a lot of the names that you run into in the world of Excel are kind of generic. And I mean, as it's just normal, right? They're just kind of generic. And Excel kind of looks, all the screenshots look kind of generic. Everything's green, kind of washed out. And I just thought, it would be a lot better if I had a short name that was kind of cryptic, and also I thought reflected the idea of something that was short and concise, and also would help you work faster. But then, visually was memorable too, and simple and orange. One of my sons, who's a really talented artist, always gives me a hard time because he doesn't like that orange. He thinks it looks like a pumpkin or something like that. But I still kind of like it because I don't think people don't use orange as much with Excel. They use green more. So.
Right. So is that kind of like a mantra for you to keep things short and simple? I mean, is that you have a whole list of shortcuts on your website? So is that kind of a guiding philosophy?
I'm a sucker. I'm a total minimalist wannabe, and I can't really say I live that way, but I'm a sucker for the idea of minimalism, and also I really, and you guys I'm sure can appreciate this, but occasionally you'll be trying to solve a problem in Excel that you solved before, and it might be kind of complex, but because you need to do this certain 7 steps, like in a certain order, you can just bang it off in 5 minutes. And the first time you did it, it probably took 4 hours, and you gave up a few times because you got so frustrated. But I feel like it's really interesting, right? Like a carpenter is that way. A carpenter who knows how to build a door frame. Like I couldn't build a door frame, I'm sure. Positive I couldn't do that. But a carpenter could build one because they've done it a bunch of times, right? And so I feel like Excel, like that too, it's got a certain, when you get good at it, you develop skill and you recognize patterns and you repeat those patterns. You're not really doing something nobody's done before. You're doing something exactly the same way. And so I really like that idea. I really like the idea that anybody can learn those patterns and do really sophisticated things without being some crazy mad scientist.
You know, Dave, I tell you, anybody who has a painting like that that you have behind you is not going to have a pale, washed-out green website. It's not going to happen. You know, and I heard something very similar whenever I talked to John Widower, Vertex 42.
Yeah.
You think Vertex 42? I mean, where's the Excel name in that, right? And ends up the whole concept of the name was so that it would be so generic to where he could go into pretty much any business that he wanted to. And the 42 was from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Right?
The answer to this question. Yeah.
I was like, wow, I didn't even think about that till you had it on there. I mean, that was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So, Jordan, Oz, do you guys have any questions around training? 'Cause I know you guys have been training quite a bit.
I've got a question because I was just working on a blog post today, and it's interesting that you're here. How do you respond to a question of, teach me Excel?
Yeah. Well, honestly, I mean, you know, the first course I built is called Core Excel. It's about 130 videos, and I often think of them as, you know, they're all short, they're all like 3 minutes or less, but I think of it as like it's the 130 boring things you need to know before you can go to the next level. And it's all sorts of stuff like how to insert rows and how to insert columns and how to delete rows and columns, right? Like how the grid works, like how you can delete 1,000 rows and Excel doesn't care, right? Excel just replaces those again with another 1,000 rows. And I feel like it's really important to do that basic work. I'm personally pretty impatient when I learn something, and you know, like I'll think, oh yeah, I don't need to know that stuff because I already understand something more advanced. But then often I find that I struggle with something stupid because I didn't pay attention to the beginning stuff, you know. And so I feel like you need to spend some time doing the basic stuff. Not all of it necessarily, but you should spend some time, you know, learning the basic functions, learning the basic idea of formulas and cell references and mixed references. Just understand what those things are, even if you don't need them today. And then I feel like you're in a much better position to build on that later. But it's hard, Oz. I mean, I don't feel like there's an easy answer to that question. The best answer is use it every day, and you'll figure it out.
Now, okay, now I get you there. Because my philosophy has been, what's going to pull somebody's ass out of the fire? And if I do have to show them some nested formula to pull their ass out of the fire to get their Friday afternoons back, you know, because that's what happens. Some vendor sends them this thing, and they know that's what Friday afternoon looks like. So I don't get into automatic column widths. How to, you know, download fonts online and install them to your computer and use them on Excel. You know, so there's a whole lot of things that are there, a whole lot of very fundamental things. But you know, I don't believe in the beginner, intermediate, advanced teaching, because unless somebody really is trying to master Excel, excuse me, then they need that fundamental, and they need to be doing it every day. Now, I agree with you 100% there.
Yeah, no, I think also too, for a lot of people, Excel is like a tool they don't really get very well, and they don't like it very much. Honestly, a lot of people feel that way, right?
Right.
And then you show them, but then sometimes you show them one way to do something, and really for me, the main thing that will do it for people is if they see Excel actually do a lot of their work for them, they'll pay attention, right? Like that's the power of pivot tables. If you do reports that are similar to pivot tables, and you realize like, wow, I can just knock these things out. And the other thing about pivot tables, right, is you know if you set up the data right, you know the result is perfect. You don't need to worry about whether you screwed up the formulas. And so I just think that for people, you know, the light goes on when they see Excel do something. And conditional formatting, I think, is interesting this way too, right? If you want to pick out the top 10 values out of 1,000, conditional formatting can just show them to you in a second. And when people see that kind of stuff, then they realize, like, oh, there's stuff here that I didn't understand. I didn't realize Excel could do that. And you're right. Like, that's what motivates people. And then once they're motivated, I feel like, you know, they can figure a lot of stuff out on their own.
Yeah. So if they get to see it, if they get to taste that pudding.
Yeah.
Yeah. But see, the thing is, we got to train people to ask, can I taste that pudding? That's what's missing. They aren't asking to taste the pudding.
Right. That's actually going to be our new bumper sticker. Ask to taste the pudding, Excel TV logo.
Then on Cafe Press immediately.
Yeah.
I have just one comment to say, because I actually owe Dave a debt of gratitude, because when I first started doing training, I did not do my due diligence and find out whether I'd be training with a Mac, with the folks who, if they had Macs or if they had Windows, or perhaps I had thought that I could do it because they had a Mac. So I was doing all these keyboard shortcuts, and I was telling them what to do, and they were inevitably wrong because they're not the same for Macs. So I needed a way to tell them, I'd say, well, on your machine it's this, and so I actually found your site and became an invaluable resource. So you don't really know, you don't really know how you saved me. How you saved my ass, as Oz would say.
That's right.
Pulled my ass out of the fire. That's
out
it.
of the fire.
The shortcuts
really shows you. Yeah.
They're popular. People love that. One thing about the course, I should say, that, I built this course, and I should say, to kind of react to what you said, Oz, too, is that I felt like I needed to cover all that boring stuff because I was going to do it right. This is all kind of me thinking, like, I'm going to build this giant pyramid of knowledge, right? And I got to do the first layer first. But I can't say from a business decision that was a good idea, because most people feel like they don't need that. They think, I already know that stuff, And so I'm not sure I would do it that way again. That's one thing. And also, people don't like going through the basics, A lot of people think, I've been using Excel for 10 years. Why would I do some kind of course like that?
Yeah. Why would you tell me how to save?
Yeah. But on the shortcut thing, one thing, Jordan, is that it's incredible. It's just incredible how much people pay attention to shortcuts in the world of Excel. And I just get emails almost every day from people about shortcuts and about that resource and being able to use a Mac at home and a PC at work. And people find it incredibly frustrating when they know maybe 30 or 40 shortcuts pretty well, and then 10 of those don't work on the Mac. They just find that just drives them absolutely mad. And so I noticed when I built that, I couldn't find any side-by-side thing, and that's really what I wanted, because I was using both platforms every day. And so but it turned out that a lot of people, that really resonates with a lot of people. They are in hot pursuit of as many shortcuts as they can find.
Definitely. So speaking of which, Jordan, you want to take
Yeah,
the topic of the week?
I picked this because it was such an interesting segue. So our topic of the week is actually shortcuts. So what I am presenting to the panel is not just shortcuts in Excel. Of course, I think we should talk about a little bit more at length on why keyboard shortcuts are so well liked. What drives us to do that, or why they're good ideas. But when are times, when you're laying out data, or you're with a client, or you're training, when you should not do a shortcut. So that's really what I'm thinking. And people will say to me, like, oh, I bet you're really good at those keyboard shortcuts, but I'm not. There are people out there who can just fly through them. But I do know when I'm training, I have the habit of doing these shortcuts, especially like for a webinar where they can't even see really me flying on the keyboard, and they don't know what's going on. So there's an example where the shortcut isn't really helping me out. Although when they learn them, their minds are blown. They're like, whoa, slow down, and I'm like, all right, here's what we do, and you show them, and then they don't even care what I was presenting. They're like, it's like when you get a little kid like a present, and they love the wrapping paper. So
yeah.
I'm not trying to call my people I'm training little kids in a patronizing way, but I get it, because that's what happens to me when I see these shortcuts. So what experiences, well, I would ask you, Dave, first, what is it about these shortcuts? I know you were saying that a little bit about that before. Is it helping people get things done more quickly?
I think so. I think, for people, first of all, I don't feel like, even though I built that resource, and I feel like a lot of my daily life is somehow involves Excel shortcuts right now. And like you, Jordan, I don't feel like I'm that great at them. Like I use a lot, but there's people that are so much better than I am, And they're younger, like the kids, the model guys can just whiz through that stuff, But they don't even have to look at the ribbon or anything ever, But I guess there's the idea of saving time, and then navigational shortcuts. If you ever learned the navigational shortcuts, like how to move down a big list, those are the shortcuts. Once you kind of get the hang of them, you can never go back, right? You can never go back to scrolling. You'll find some way to get them back. And I suppose it's related when you get into things like paste special. It's just a couple more shortcuts that will finish off the job of converting some formulas to values or something like that. I don't know. And then I don't know. Yeah, people just seem to walk around all the time with one shortcut that they want to know. And like a lot of people will ask me like, what's a shortcut for insert comment? Like they just got to know that. But like I don't hardly ever use comments. It never makes much sense to me. But that's a burning issue for them.
So Oz, what do you think about that? I know that anytime that we do tips, and the tip is, I think, a John Peltier or someone like that. Anytime it's a shortcut, it's an immediate 2 to 3 srirachis for you.
Oh.
Why do you hate the shortcut, Oz? Why do you hate the shortcut? Why are you a hater?
Oh man, why am I a hater? Okay, now you can be saying hater like hater or a hater like hater. So the thing is, I don't hate shortcuts. It's what do I want to put on the finite real estate called my mind. And I don't want to fill it up with a whole bunch of Alt-Shift-Z, Control-Alt-Shift-W. I don't want to do that because usually, and I think this depends on how you use Excel. Right? And I'm constantly dealing with different kinds of projects, and I've got to think about how am I going to pull this apart and then put these things back together as far as this data and then get it to go on the internet and all this other kind of stuff. And I don't want to think about shortcuts, and especially when different softwares have different shortcuts, and I don't want to think about that. And then even when I had a Mac for a few years, shortcuts are different. So it's not, match is going to be match. I can't use slicers on a Mac. Okay, I got that, but I'm not going to be thinking about what is going to be that squirrely square thing or the Apple icon. And no, not me.
So you don't use Control Z when you want to undo something?
No, I don't. No, I don't. I look for the arrow because that arrow it's in the WordPress editor. That arrow is in all kind of places. You can right click and get undo, but now I will use Control Z. Control C and Control V, and then there's another shortcut that I use that I'd be willing to show you all. Yeah.
Well, I think the worst one on there though. So thinking of negative shortcuts is that F1 key. So we heard from the model off guys that the contestants will rip off the F1 keys from their keyboards because everyone keeps hitting them by accident, and then it brings up that terrible help system. Mm-hmm. So that is something that I would love to see go.
But they were only saying that though because people were using another shortcut so much, right? They were using the F2 and the escape and back and forth so much, and as a result, they would accidentally hit the F1.
Well, but I accidentally hit it all the time, and I'm not like, it's just, I was thinking about pulling it off, but then, I don't really want to ruin my keyboard. But I get it. I get it.
One thing that I've been thinking about is some kind of textured stick-on for keys. Because sometimes I'll hit the backspace on accident or hit enter on accident. And if I could put something
spikes on it, or what do you mean textured? Something you don't want to hit, like spikes or sticky or something that feels like soup?
Something that, I don't know, maybe something fuzzy like a felt or something with a little bumps on it. Something to where if I'm going to hit the apostrophe that I know that's the apostrophe, and that's as far right as I want to go.
What if you got an electric shock every time you hit the wrong line?
See,
And that could probably cause me heart problems, and then I'd be at the VA hospital.
See, Oz really does not want to fill up his mind with like ancillary kind of nonsense stuff. He don't want to know shortcuts. He don't want to even know he doesn't even want to know, have to visualize which keys he's not supposed to touch.
Right.
He wants to just
I got one for you, Oz. So, and everyone can react to what I figure you're going to say. So, you have any sort of clients who've done shortcuts, who you've seen do shortcuts, and you say to yourself, "Oh man, I wish they hadn't done that."
No.
No, really? You're not going in and fixing it. I figured you'd be like, "Oh man, I tell you, this guy did a shortcut, and then I had to come in and fix it." I'm not doing a good Oz, but I figured
That's very
you'd like that.
anticlimactic, isn't it?
Huh? What'd you say?
It's very anticlimactic. I was expecting to go all cold
right?
seed and
Great for you.
No. I didn't. No, I've never had that problem. No. But I've been around people who use keyboard shortcuts. The guy George Gilmer out in Chicago kills it with shortcuts. Man, the guy's fast. But I'm not impressed. I'm slow and I'm mighty. Right.
So, Dave, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So you said that the core concepts was your first. That was your first class, and that's the one. So in a certain sense, people can't shortcut across that one. They need to take that one first, right? So I'm just wondering. I'm not trying to make a contradiction, but I wonder. I'm just trying to complicate our notion of shortcuts.
What do you mean? So that's not a good idea then to use the shortcuts for the basic stuff, or?
No, I don't know. I'm just wondering. If there's a time when just thinking about this idea of shortcuts. If you can't do shortcuts. You got to lay down the foundation first before moving forward.
Well, what I find what's interesting with Excel is that, and I'm sure this is something that you guys have all noticed too, is that often there's 5 ways or 4 ways to do something. And I actually find that this is one of the things that makes it such a hard program to teach people, because in a lot of cases, if you don't remember the shortcut for something, a lot of times there is one, but you'll right click, right? And if you right click, a lot of times you get a contextual menu and you can figure out what you want to do from that. But often, there is a button somewhere on the ribbon. If you knew what tab it's in, you could find it there. And in a funny way, you could argue that shortcuts make it easier, because once you know the shortcuts, you can stop paying attention to the right clicks and to the ribbon. You just do what you want to do. But I don't know. I don't know what I think about the. I actually even in the beginning videos when I use shortcuts, and I don't use them as much, but after I've explained it once or twice, like with the ribbon, with the contextual menu, a lot of times the next time I do it, I'll use a shortcut and I'll put that on the screen. But I don't ever stop and try to talk about it, because it's too boring, and the Mac version's always kind of like the Windows version, but not really, and so it's just to be a tangled mess to get into. So I just put it on the screen for a second, or I should say my wife Lisa does that because she does the animation, and then it's gone. Some people might really care. One thing maybe, anyway, I don't want to go on about that, but I don't know. I don't think always that Microsoft's interface makes it easier to learn.
Well, let me say something here. You said something about there's 4 or 5 ways of doing things, and that it can be a problem. I see it as freeing.
Yeah.
To get people to relax when they say, "I'm going to show you my spreadsheet, but you're going to laugh at my formulas." No, I am not. If you found some big, sloppy, messy way of doing something and it's done, then it's done, and you can do something else. Now, maybe I can teach you some efficiency, tighten some things up, show you a feature that is built in to do what you were trying to do, but that's the beautiful thing. You got 4 ways of doing something. Just keep moving forward, sister. I'll be all right.
So let's keep moving forward then. Oz, you wanna take us off with the tip section?
Right. Sell hot tips. This ghost pepper sriracha for this ghost that's coming to your house on Halloween. All right. Hot tips. All right. So I will show you this keyboard shortcut that I do use. Oh boy.
Oh, I can't wait to give you 2 srirachas. This is magic. This is magic.
Okay, so I just have to open the spreadsheet up. Okay, and then I will here. Share my screen. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, so let me make this larger. So I'm going to show you the hot tip that I like, and I believe it was Al Chen who showed me this. Now this was the shortcut that rocked my world. All right, so I want to move these 3 up. Gotta hold down Alt Shift, move this, and it just moves it, right? And it moves the other things down and out of the way.
Cool. Can you do that again?
Yep. All right.
I'm trying to catch it.
Alt Shift.
All right. Oh.
And let it go.
Wow.
So let's move Soul. Alt Shift.
I've never seen anything like that before.
Oh! Yeah.
It does an insert.
Yep. You don't have to, do the whole thing like this. Enter, insert, and then move this up here. You don't have to do that kind of thing. All right, so let's get on to something else here, what I want to show you. Some more of this Excel funk that y'all love to smell. All right. Here we go. I drove from Chicago to Portland, and here are the dates, times, my gas, and everything, and the locations where I got gas. So I want to show you all. Insert Power View. Create a Power View sheet. Okay. All right, so I still, one thing I need to learn about is this whole cache thing, because I suspect that this spreadsheet is pulling from the Power View that I already created before, right? But the idea being, what I wanted to show you is that we have this interface that looks a little like the pivot table interface, and in here I have the different locations where I stopped for gas, and the interface automatically put all of the cities in here already, right? All I had was, Boise, Idaho, Cheyenne, Fort Bridger, Wyoming, and Excel put those on the map when I inserted map here. Okay, and so the locations are here, and then my spending, how much I spent. And here, the smallest circle, I spent the least money. I got $4.93 worth of gas in Rock Springs, Wyoming. And
I know there's a story there.
and $50.79 right before I got on the road in Chicago.
How'd you just get $4 of gas? What were you doing?
Fill up the lawnmower?
No. Okay, I'll tell you. I'm gonna unshare this.
It's so dark.
All right, can you oh man, this is doing.
No, I like this. It was kind of Halloween, you know?
Yeah.
Really into the
No,
Krampus.
I don't know why my camera does that. I gotta fix it. But damn.
That's all right.
Okay. I'll work on this anyway. Here's the story. How did I get $4 worth of gas? Friends warned me that there are stretches between gas stations, and you do not want to run out of gas.
Yeah.
Fill up whenever you have a chance. So I believe that point was where I needed to pull off and go to the bathroom and said, okay, I'm getting gas.
That makes sense.
Yep.
That makes sense. So
Yep.
how many garages are you going to give your tips?
For the move, the automatic insert, let's say let's do 3.
No,
All right.
that's not enough. That's
You
not
don't
enough.
think so?
That's a 5. For me, it's a 5er.
Okay. All right. For when you need to move that data around, and you can grab big blocks of data and move those. And then how about the power view? I'm gonna say 4, but you got it. Is that on only 2013? Excel 2013?
Power view? I think it is.
Okay.
I think that's right.
And insert map. So, but here, I want to just do one more thing. Okay. All right. Okay. Up here, the bar where I can say, okay, the dollars per gallon. Now here is 375 to 390. Move this. That's where I paid between 351 and 367.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And all of this is in Power View.
This is very similar to Tableau.
Oh.
You've used Tableau before, but it's very, very similar.
Okay. But you didn't have to. I didn't have to spend $1,000 for this.
No, that's right.
Right. Okay. So so that's it for me, and everybody has a tip this week. So who wants to go next?
This is Rick. I'll go next. So share my screen here. Moment. Entire screen. Share. And guys, please let me know when you see my Excel spreadsheet.
You are up.
Yep.
Okay. So I have a blog post that will be coming out in the next week over at excel.tv. And it'll be how to best do Monte Carlo simulation in Excel. And in the blog post, I'll talk about Monte Carlo simulation, what it is, and all the different kinds of distribution curves you can use. So I'm not going to go into all that here. I just want to talk about how you set this up and how you make it work. So first off, let's assume that you have just a normal business problem where you have, we'll say, a forecast. And we'll say this forecast is, in this instance, is basically your mean or your average, but this is what you're forecasting. Yes?
Can you increase the view?
Can you see that okay?
Still about the same size, but it can work.
Okay. Well, I'm going to end up filling up all this space. So what you have up here is, we'll say, an average, we'll say, of revenue of $5 million, variable expenses in your forecast of $3 million, we'll say a fixed expense of $1 million, so you're saying your profit is going to be $1 million, right? But you have a problem here in that things are never exact, right? It's never going to be exactly $5 million. In most cases, there's a distribution that you would expect to happen around that number. There's a probability it'll be lower, there's a probability it'll be higher, and in this case, we're just going to assume, for the purpose of this Monte Carlo simulation, a normal distribution curve. and say that, as we run, we'll say in this case 1,000 different iterations of this in this distribution curve, what is your probability of being profitable? So first off, let's look at what a standard deviation is. In this case, we're going to say around your mean of $5 million for revenue, and these are just arbitrary numbers. We'll say the standard deviation is 1.5 million, and for variable expenses, it's 500,000. So then, how would you set this up so that you could figure out your likelihood of being profitable or your likelihood of making more than $1 million? So let's go through the first step, which is your first iteration, and then we'll get into how you do 1,000 iterations and how you figure out your probabilities. So first off, your first simulation. Now, take a look at this. The first thing that you do is get your distribution curve. In this case, we're going to use a normal inverse curve. And again, in the blog post, I'll go through all the different types of curves that you could use for probabilities. But in this case, we'll say you're using a normal dot inverse. There's quite a few of them. What is your probability? So in this case, I'm going to use a random number that's within that distribution. And that's going to ask you what my mean is. My mean is the 5 million, and my standard deviation here is 1.5 million. So in the simulation, we have 7.2 million. But since I'm using a random, if I click it again, now it's 3.9 million. And, so again, since I'm using random, and so I'm getting a number of variables, outputs or simulations that are within this distribution curve, right? And we can do the same thing with the expenses, where we have a normal inverse curve, a random number within that normal inverse curve, and what your mean is and what your standard deviation is. And in some instances, you're going to have, of course, fixed expenses. So we'll say in this one simulation, this one likelihood or this one probability, you could actually not have 1 million, but 962,000. Or we could do it again, and you're just as likely to have, minus 990,000. And so then the question really becomes, once you've set this up and you've set up probabilities along this distribution curve, if you did this 1,000 times or 1,000,000 times, what would it look like? And how can you figure out probabilities of being profitable? So let's take a look at how that could look. And here's 1,000 different, I just unhid this, but we'll show you how to set this up real quickly. And credit goes to Matt McCarthy over on YouTube, so I'll link to that as well, on how to set up the table so that this Monte Carlo simulation works. But the very first iteration here is your 1.4 million. And you know that by us clicking in and hitting the refresh, and you see the negative 190,000. So how do you get the rest of these set up, right? And the way that you do this, and it's kind of tricky, is I would highlight all of this section here, and you'll see there's a table where a table has been inserted. And the way that's done then is you would do an insert, a data table, and within the data table here in your input column cell, this is a tricky way of doing this, and again I'll link to the video that shows you how to do this, to actually link to a blank cell. And linking to a blank cell, it actually runs, and in most cases, it's not going to let me do it now because I've already set this up, but in doing that, it tricks the system into allowing you to do iterations for everything that's here. So what this means is now I have 1,000 different iterations of this distribution curve. So what I can do now is figure out the percentage of these that end up being negative. So let's walk through that then. Here's your likelihood of losing money. In this case, it's 26%. And this is by using COUNTIF functions, grabbing my range here, and figuring out how many of those are less than a 0 divided by my 1,000 iterations, so you have your percentages, and your likelihood of being greater than 1 million. So basically, this decision, even though it says on paper in a forecast that you're going to make $1 million, realize in this decision, you have a 26% likelihood of losing money. And you have to figure out if that risk is worth it. Here you could also come in and just play with the numbers if you chose to and say, well, my standard deviation is really 500,000. This is really, 300,000. And all of your numbers would update then for you. So that is how to do a Monte Carlo simulation in Excel. A very high level. I'll get into this a lot more detail in a blog post that I'll put out at excel.tv in the next week.
Cool.
Yeah, cool.
You know what? I'm gonna give this a 4. Because I've heard a lot about Monte Carlo simulations and weaknesses with Excel and how it does RAND and RAND between. But this helps to explain what the heck is a Monte Carlo simulation. So, got a question about other uses of the Monte Carlo simulation.
Right. So I've seen this primarily in finance and in doing risk management. So figuring out if you're, if you're looking to make basically the scenario that I just put out. So if you're going to make a business decision, what is the likelihood that that business decision is actually going to lose you money? So it's one thing to do forecasts based on averages. And you'll always find a way that your forecast based on averages is always positive. And it's always NPV just barely enough. Right, your internal rate of return is just barely enough. You can always find a way of that happen, and really the smart leader, the analytic leader, will want to see that through 1,000 iterations or so, or 1,000,000 iterations, or whatever your software will allow, to figure out really what is my likelihood, really what is my probability. In this case, we just use a normal distribution curve, but realize in other software you can do triangle curves where the minimum you could ever go is 0. So standard deviations don't make sense. It's not a curve where the tails go on forever. 0. You can never have less than 0. You can never have more than 100, we'll say. And so, knowing how to set that up, I'll go into that a lot more detail in the blog post, but knowing how to set up those distribution curves is really the key.
That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool because I'm thinking about how forecasting will be done, and it seems like it takes emotion out of a forecast being wrong, or markets going against you, or things that you had no control over, and just saying, baking in some kind of reality that things can go the wrong way or they can go the really right way.
Yeah, just because the average stock market comes back at 8% doesn't mean you're not going to lose 7% one year. That's part of the normal distribution.
Yeah, cool. All right.
It is worth realizing at the same time that people will assume normality when they really may not even have basis to do that. They'll sometimes just do it because everyone knows that distribution. It's the one you learn in statistics. So I think that people come in sometimes thinking that you're going to remove emotion, but really you can put bias into the model. That's all I want to say.
Absolutely. Your median could be different than your mean. Right, which is what you're saying. The data could be skewed right, the data could be skewed left, and there's a lot of different distribution curves you got to be concerned with. Yeah, I know Jordan and Dave. Jordan, you guys had tips as well. Do you want to talk next, Jordan?
I will jump in. So first of all, just following along our theme of shortcuts, I will say that I worked on a project that ran a Monte Carlo simulation, and their random variables were all triangular distributions. And when you have something like that, and they ran it several times, a few thousand times. When you have something that's an easy distribution, I don't know if a lot of you know about that, but the law of large numbers says that over time, things are going to tend towards I shouldn't say things, that the expected value of a random variable is going to be its average, especially for a triangular distribution. So that's actually something you can figure out without running the Monte Carlo. So if you have the math skills to do that, sometimes it makes sense to do that. So I tried to sell that to them. I don't know if they really wanted to do that because they like their simulation. But just having worked in the simulation field, that's something that you always kind of try to, if you can remove that level of complexity. But for many people, learning that is already a complexity. So in that case, it may be easier to run it. So I actually have a very easy tip, but it's something that I use so often. So you see I have a whole bunch of smiley faces here. And so I want to select the one that's really under here, but I don't really want to move these smiley faces around. So if I click on any one of these, it's going to bring up that Format Context menu. I'm going to go there and I'm going to click Selection Pane. And I love this selection pane.
Yeah.
I can just jump to whatever one I want. So Smiley 10, where are you, buddy? He's somewhere over here. I can just move him out. Hey, what's up? I'm going to put him back. I love this selection pane. The thing that bugs me most about the selection pane is that you have to get it through the context menu. So I've added mine, of course, to the quick access toolbar, but it really would be nice if I didn't even have to do that. Hopefully Microsoft's listening. So that's one of my favorite tips.
Yeah. Yeah, that's selection pane. All right, so we're going 5 with that. 'Cause, yeah. That is an issue. You get a lot of images, and sometimes you want to grab them, all of them, and just delete them all. You know, or just fish out the one that you're looking for, but you got everything else all lined up. Yeah. All right. So that gets a 5 from me. All right. Cool.
The simple things.
Okay. Now
Dave, we have you down as well, Dave.
Yeah, let me see if I can share my screen here, and let's see. You guys see it?
Yep.
Big Excel thing. Okay, so this is a tip that involves conditional formatting. You could use it along with filtering a list, or you could use it instead of filtering a list. And the basic idea is to.
Can you increase the view size?
Here, let me make
Zoom in just a little bit.
That better?
Just a smidge more. There we go.
Okay.
That looks good.
So the basic idea is you've got some data, and this is kind of this is just some client stuff I'm working with. It's like a random set of product data, but this could be a list of issues like project issues or milestones or action items or anything like that. And the idea is that you could, of course I could select this and put a filter on it and start messing around. If I want to find a certain product, I could start doing that. But this is an alternative to doing that. So let me turn the filter back off. I don't know if you guys caught that keyboard shortcut, but I'll talk about that some other time. So here's how it works. So let's say that I'm looking for this Hob cover thing, and I know I'm looking for Hob, right? So I can just type in Hob, and it highlights all of the rows that have that in there. And you can see this data is all messed up because I've just copied and pasted it a bunch of times. So it's going to keep giving me this really even distribution, but it wouldn't normally be that way. You could take something else. I could take a product number or SKU and type in like SK part of this, like 6.8 should do it. And actually, I guess I selected the same thing all over again. Let me pick a different one. Let me just actually type or put one in here. Different number. So you can see what's happening is that each time I add something to the search box, it highlights cells in the data. Actually, it highlights entire rows. It doesn't care about, I could do it with individual cells, but personally I kind of like it when it just throws the line across the whole table. And if you delete from the search box here, then you don't have anything highlighted anymore. So I like this because you can see the data that you're trying to find, but you can also see the data that you're not trying to find. And sometimes what you'll notice is like you should be finding something, but you're not, or the reverse. And so I just like that, especially if you're on the phone, like in a client call, and you're trying to look up a bunch of issues, for example. This is a nice way to do it because you can always see all the issues, but it allows you to focus on just a couple that you're looking for. So the way it works is, just really briefly, is that I've got a name. You probably can't read this very well, but there's a range called search box, and that's just this range here of merged cells. And if we look at some of the conditional formatting, what you'll see here is that I'm using that named range. This will be hard to read. Probably almost impossible to read. Hang on a second here. Let me see if I can paste it. I'm just going to move it into a cell here to see if it's any better. Getting out of a lot of cells. Okay, so this is the formula that's in. I don't know if that's any better. This is a formula that's actually doing all the work. And in a nutshell, I'm not going to dissect the whole thing, but what's happening is that we're just using. Got to remind myself of this. We're using the search function to find what I'm typing into the search box. And I'm just using concatenation. I'm just jamming together a whole bunch of columns. I don't even care really how they look. I'm just jamming, column A to column B to column C. I'm just jamming all those together, and then I'm looking inside that text to see whether I get a hit. And most of the code here of this formula is just error checking so that when you don't have anything in the search box, nothing is selected nothing is highlighted in the data. So It's not that hard to set up. I've actually got a video on this in the tips area on the XLJet site that walks you through it. It's called How to Highlight Rows with Conditional Formatting. But yeah, that's my tip.
All right.
Great tip. That's awesome.
That's pretty smart.
Let me stop sharing. Yeah.
So you know what? Okay, so here's how I'm thinking is, yeah, thanks for taking us into conditional formatting and the thought process of, you know, things you want to find and things you ought to be finding.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole thought process, that's where the juicy stuff is. It's not in, you know, so much in this fancy formula. So that's why I'm giving it a 5. And then also the idea of highlighting an entire row as opposed to just individual cells in a column or a row. So this is really good. Really good. About building really useful tools rather than having some trick that's cute, you know? All right. So, those hot tips. All right.
So
Is everybody feeling good and warm right now?
Feeling warm. Feeling warm.
I'm going to come feel you, Rick.
Can't wait.
Oh, you might be lying to me.
Let's get ready. So speaking of coming to feel me, in our news section this week, for our next episode, myself, Jordan, and Oz, we all meet for the first time. So we're meeting at the MVP Summit. Jordan's one of those special MVPs, and so he's going to be there. And hey, he can't go anywhere without bringing me and Oz. So we're going too. Can't stop us from being there. So we'll be there as well, and so we're going to do some recording while we're there. Hopefully we can get a hold of a few of the MVPs and talk to some of the product leaders and all that sort of stuff while we're there. So that will be a good portion of the next show. Also have a few other things to share with you. So I'm going to share my screen here. One moment. Okay. So first off, I want to remind, I trust you can see my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
First off, I'd like to remind everyone of Excel Sumo. Excel Sumo, you have 2 more weeks to get in your pitch or to get in your solution. I'd like to remind you that the winner of this, there's basically 16 teams that will be, or 16 spreadsheets that will go into the draw around lifestyle or technical or fun and entertainment and business productivity. And starting on, this goes through, we're accepting applications through November 3rd. The November 10th episode will actually have the first round of this. Some of the prizes are around, you get to go to Model Off and hang out with us and hang out with not only us, but also cool people. There's also second place and third place here around some of the Chandu courses. And just for making it to the top 16, you get a copy of Gorilla Data Analysis using Microsoft Excel, the 2nd edition by Oz Du Soleil and Bill Jellin. So you get Bill has said the first 16 that come off the press.
Yeah.
We'll go to you. So that's some good stuff there. Next bit of news to share is just to remind everybody this weekend is the first round of Model Off. So, if you want to compete against the very best in the world, financial modeling, that first round is this weekend. I actually have something to share on this. Come back to me. Hopefully.
So I wonder, Dave, do you will you be competing in Model Off?
No, not this year. I'm busy building a course on formulas, which is probably going to take me like 5 years.
Okay, all right. But you've done it in the past?
No, I never have. Like, I'm super interested in modeling. I consider it to be kind of, the final destination. Oh. But I feel like I'm sort of like down in the trenches right now, so I can't go there, otherwise I'll never get anything done.
Gotcha.
So, I met a guy at the company that I'm consulting at out here in California. I was talking to some of the people around. There's only like 1 or 2 people there who know that I do this show and that I'm involved in Excel TV, and one of them had heard one of the people in finance talk about they were going to be doing this big financial modeling competition this weekend. And so he came over and he introduced me. He says, "Oh, Rick is the only other person I've ever heard talk about this." And so we just geeked out for like 45 minutes. It was awesome. So I brought up all the websites and everything else. It was fun. So it's kind of cool that just, random finance guy out here in Irvine, California, sitting in his cubicle. I'm sitting there talking with him, and he's just geeked out and can't wait to do the Financial Modeling World Championship this weekend. So it was pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
Models are cool.
Fun stuff. Jordan, you also had some news?
I do. Okay, so many of you have been waiting on my book, so the Dashboards for Excel book. So here is the exciting news that's going on. I've written a lot of pages of that book, and it's giant now, and I'm actually bringing on Chandu as a second author to help me finish the book, but that's not the exciting news. The exciting news is that I'm actually publishing a smaller book from that big book, so this is a bit of an abridged version, and that is coming out October 29th. So that's actually coming out this month. So 250 pages of some great content. I'm going to show you where you can get it. So 2 places to get it. You can jump on Amazon. Advanced Excel Essentials. You see, I just typed it and searched it. I have to search my own book. I don't have a direct link. Amazon's probably your best place to get it because you can get a discount. And I don't know why I'm telling you that because that takes out of my royalties, but I do want you actually to get a discount. You should try that. So Amazon is a good place to get it if you want to get it in the ebook form. You can jump over to apress.com. You can buy it when it will be available in PDF. So I don't think it makes it to a PDF on Amazon site. So you can go to apress.com and you can search for it, or you can go to Amazon. And also, if you've pre-ordered my book, so the big book, if you pre-ordered the Dashboards book and you're still waiting on that, and you want to get your hands on this copy, let me know. Drop me an email, and I can see if I can get you a discount or even get it for free. And on top of that, I'm going to see, and we're going to probably fight with the publisher on this a little bit, if I can release a chapter or 2 on my blog. So stay tuned. Exciting things are going to be happening. I do want to give one last caveat about this book. I'll just switch to it. If you know me, you know that I love advanced stuff. So unlike the Dashboards book, which has a lot more information and theory behind it, this is very much an in-and-out book, and it's very much an advanced book. So if you have an intermediate level of ABA, an intermediate level of formulas, you should do great. But even if you don't, if you just want to be able to learn more, if you have a desire and thirst to learn more and do things differently, then this is a book for you. So hopefully everyone here on the panel is going to be buying one. Is that right? Do I have that right? You guys all want one?
Looking forward to it. Absolutely.
Thank you. Where did that come from?
Our live studio audience.
Hey, so Jordan, can you talk a little bit about how this is different from your dashboard book? So the larger book was a dashboard book. I noticed the title of this had nothing to do with dashboards.
Right. So there is some material from the Dashboards book, but this book is it's a lot more. Let me think how to say this. It's a lot more of an expression of the stuff that I write about on my blog. So the really advanced stuff and the really contrarian stuff. So the arguing about Hungarian notation in this book, it puts the argument to rest. No, but it really actually comes in, it's very much a manifesto for how I believe. So there are things in there that I'm going to argue you should do differently. You know, it's not things I've seen before. I won't go so far as to say that I'm the first one to write about them, because I'm probably not. You know, there's nothing really ever new. But I think that as far as new Excel books go, this brings an alternative perspective, and it brings an alternative perspective because from a lot of what we learn initially, so we may learn to use macro recording, or we may learn to code a certain way and not necessarily have ever challenged that. So this book will challenge that. You don't have to really agree with me, but I think at the end of the day, it's all about identifying the core principles. So what makes an advanced development? Well, it's these philosophies, and they extend from this point. So this book is very much about you know, coding style. This is how I believe you should code. This is how I believe you should set up formulas. And here's why. So what works, what doesn't, and why.
Okay, so when you say what makes something advanced is the core philosophy?
Well, you know, it's advanced applications of topics, but there is a core philosophy in there, so that you know, I'm not. I wish I had known. I wish I had better done these questions to sell the book. But there is this idea that I have that you know, we sort of code. We do things with VBA. Our style, the way we code and the style we code, isn't necessarily one that we've put a lot of thought into. It's one that we've done because we did it because the people before us did it that way, and the people before them did it that way. I make it sound like this is years and years old, but I came in, for example, knowing Hungarian notation, but I'm very much against using Hungarian notation now. And I think that the fact that people do use Hungarian notation, it constrains the way we think about this problem. So we have to be able to move past it. Now, people may disagree, but I think that as they see the work in the book, they'll see that there's something to this idea that we just can't keep doing things the way that we used to do them.
So,
I don't want to give it all away.
Jordan, are you like? So it sounds like the book has got like your opinion in it, like pretty clearly.
Yes, it does. It does. Yep.
That's awesome. I mean, I think that's one of the big problems, right, in the world with, especially in the world of IT, is that there's all these tools, and you know, and there's a zillion tips you can find on the web. Everything is the best 23 whatever. But what's missing a lot of times is the person who's really got that strong opinion about how you should do something, and that's really helpful. Like, I mean, whether you agree with it or not, like, that's awesome.
No, thank you. I very much I agree with what you said, because I think that there's opinion missing from many of these books, and I think that people they understand what to do, they don't always understand why to do it. And when I say why, I don't mean like why to make Excel. I mean why from the basis like level. Why do we code this way? Why have we been using Hungarian notation? I mean, I can tell you why, because before that it came from Visual Basic 6.0. You know, and from before that it was because Visual Basic 6.0 didn't have strict types, so you needed it. Well, I don't know if you needed it, but the point is, you know, it's always worth asking, you know, what are the first principles? And I'm trying to really go down to that point, and then for me, how does that express into this advanced application? Man, I'm making this sound really philosophical, but it is very much an in and out book too. So, you know, there is technical wisdom in there. You can use.
Why do you see this as important? Somebody wants to add up a column. Where's there room for opinion?
Well, maybe there is and there isn't, depending on how they want to do that. But another way about it is that there aren't, because we sort of are okay with that, there haven't been a whole lot of advanced books. So I don't think that there have been niche applications of advanced books, except for maybe professional Excel development, which is my favorite book. But people seem to shy away from that because they just want to teach these very basic concepts, and so every new book that comes out is like Excel 2000, beginning Excel 2013. Well, where is the advanced book that's trying to take people to the next level? Now, for many people, that isn't the audience. I mean, there are people who should not read this book who will not have any interest in it. But for people who are building very advanced Excel applications, who have not thought about ways to do things differently, many people who I've met, they really like this. I mean, because I'll show them stuff in training, and they'll be like, "Whoa!" Just kind of like you, Dave showed us that search feature. Like, I really like that search feature, and I never even thought to do that. And that's formulas and it's conditional formatting. There's no VBA, but people will want to do something like that in VBA. They'll create a whole search functionality in VBA. You know, in 1 second they could build this formula. The formula is hard to understand, but once you know it, it's not hard to understand anymore.
And you're not going to forget anymore.
And Dave, why did you say that?
The opinion? Well, mostly because I just think, like, when people know something well enough to be good at it, and I think often that means they've tried a couple different approaches, right? Like they maybe, you know, had a certain bias going into it, and they stuck with that for a while, but then later, as they got better at something, they decided they didn't like, you know, that approach as much. I just feel like when somebody's got real skill, then they become more of a craftsman, and I think, you know, people that are craftsmen have strong opinions. That's just how they are. And I feel like that's a great perspective, because somebody like that who, you know, they can just say, look, there are 10 ways to do this thing, and they'll all get you to the same result. But but I'd recommend that you just do it this way, because I can tell you right now it's a good way to do it. And like, that's super valuable, because then you don't have to spend the other time, especially if you're the analytical type, right? Then what happens is every time you got to do a problem, you'll sit down and analyze the 5 ways you could do it for a few days before you start. And that, that's kind of fun, but it's funner to have somebody just tell you, especially when you know they're good, just tell you how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So listen to me. No, I don't know. I hope I'm a craftsman. I hope I'm manifesting those things.
So guys, somewhere right around here, by the time this published out in the next few days, you'll see a link up here in the video to be able to get over to Jordan's book. You probably would have seen it 4 or 5 times already. So feel free to go ahead and click on that link, and that'll take you directly to Jordan's book over on Amazon and A-Press and all those places. So you can take a look at it and go ahead and check it out.
Yeah.
So where can you find us? Guess what? We're all over the place. But in addition, and everywhere else, we're going to have a blog post that's coming out in the next week around Monte Carlo simulation. So we talked about that a little bit earlier. So that'll be coming out in the next week. Additionally, look for us on Excel Sumo. So we'll be over there, and we're still taking applications for the next 2 weeks. So take a look at that. Go ahead and get your video at excel.tv if you have any questions around how the competition runs or anything like that. Lastly, as a reminder, our next episode will be we'll be at the MVP Summit up there in Washington. So we'll be hanging out with Mr. Bill Gates. We'll be rubbing elbows, saying, "Yo, what's up?" Oz will give him some tips, give him some ghost pepper, all that sort of stuff.
We'll give him a bow tie.
You gotta get him a bow tie. Oh, I forgot. I need to get a bow tie. So we're all over the place. Feel free to follow us on any of our social channels. Also on our social channels, particularly Facebook, is a good place to, if you have follow-ups to any of the tips. A lot of times, I think I believe her name is Minnie Peratt, and other people have jumped in and said, "Hey, I see that you did the tip this way, but here's 4 or 5 other ways you could possibly do it as well." So, and our Facebook group is a good place to go and just kind of kick around different ideas on ways to do the tip. So, it's a big group, big input, so we appreciate that.
Yep.
So,
thanks to Manny and Mike in Australia, of course. Manuel in Haiti. Good people, really good people.
A lot of people in the group that are over there, so feel free to come over there and join the conversation.
Right.
Dave, thank you so much for joining us today, all the way from Salt Lake City, Utah.
Right.
I appreciate the spiky hair. I appreciate the Jason Bateman look with the picture in the back and the photo and the.
All day long in the bathroom, all day.
The non-character.
Oh, man. It was worth it.
You gotta try pretty hard to get Oz do Soleil. So we're working on it. I appreciate that. So thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate that. Again, you could find Dave and his wife over there at exceljet.net. Just go to their website and just check out the first few videos of training. You'll see this is high quality output. I just watched the first few minutes of the first video. Gosh, I want to even say a year ago when I first was introduced to your site, and just follow. I thought, okay, how do they do this? I make videos for a living here on Excel TV, and I don't know how to do this stuff. Yeah. So you guys putting out some quality material. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
So until next time, again, the next episode will be at the Excel MVP Summit. We'll see you there. So until next time, this is Oz Du Soleil, Jordan Goldmeyer, and I'm Rick Grantham. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right.
See ya.